I want to get back to substance, gentlemen. Benny, you wrote a few days after in the New York Times that you praising the highly efficient air assault on Hamas. Okay, then we have the Goldstone that comes out, the Goldstone report, and he said Israel launched, quote, a deliberately disproportionate attack designed to punish, humiliate, and terrorize a civilian population. What's your opinion of that report?
I think it's unbalanced. I think that any Western army facing terrorists and guerrillas who hide behind a human shield, behind civilians, inevitably will use disproportionate force and will cause civilian casualties. And this is what the Hamas also wants, because then it can project it to people like Finkelstein and Goldstone as if Israel is attacking civilians. But Israel actually quite efficiently knocked out the Hamas's infrastructure in Gaza. Civilians were killed. I don't think Israel deliberately targeted them. I don't think Goldstone is right about that. I think this is a lie in his report. It did kill civilians, but this is what happens when terrorists launch attacks on Western countries from behind civilian shields.
Okay, Norman, respond, please. You wrote a book on this subject, on the Gaza war.
Right. There is, as I said earlier, there is also an extensive documentary record on what happened in Gaza. More than a dozen human rights reports came out. So let's look at the record as against Dr. Morris's fantasy. All the human rights organizations agreed. There is no evidence that Hamas engaged in human shielding in Gaza. You can look at Amnesty International, its report, 22 Days of Death and Destruction, and it goes very thoroughly through the record, and it concludes there is no evidence that Hamas engaged in human shielding. Number two, no, Mr. Morris, you really have to let me talk. You can't be so rude.
Where does human shielding even come into play here? It's not as if the combatants are saying we were trying to target combatants, but they were being shielded by civilians. That's not what the testimony says. If it did say it, I would have put it in the book, because I am not afraid of truth.
התפיסה של החמאס מאוד מבוססת על להיטמע שם באוכלוסייה ולהילחם מתוך שטח אזרחי, ואנחנו ראינו את זה. ירו עלינו מספר מסגדים, בתי ספר, שלא מדבר כמובן על בתים פרטיים. יש שם בית של, אתה יודע, משפחה, ואתה רואה עדיין את הבגדים תלויים בחוץ, מנפנפים כל מיני שמלות של ילדים, אתה יודע, ילדות. ומאחורה מסתתר לך מחבל עם קלצ'ניקוב ויורה עליך. אתה רואה את הניצול הזה גם של החמאס, של ילדים. אני יכול, אירוע אחד שהיה לנו בגדוד, שגם מחבל שהתחילו להיסגר עליו והבינו שנמצא בבית מסוים. באיזשהו שלב שם הילד קטן, החזיק אותו צמוד אליו וברח. כל מחבל עכשיו שמחליט שהוא נכנס למקום אזרחי, זה לא נותן לו חסינות. מצד שני, אנחנו שוקלים מאוד מאוד טוב, כי אף אחד לא רוצה, אתה יודע, לפגוע בבלתי מעורבים, ובמיוחד לא שמדובר בילדים, נשים.
I know what it feels like to be used as a human shield. Back in 2014, during Israel's war with Hamas, I was in Gaza City, and almost every night I could see Hamas fighters assemble, then fire off their rockets from the basement of my hotel. Hamas knew without a shadow of a doubt that the Israelis would not target the hotel because it was filled with foreign journalists.
We're taking advantage of this ceasefire in order to basically snoop around. Remember this rocket which was shot right while I was live on France 24.
This 80% of Gaza.
Okay, are you all right?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, what happened? What happened?
Yeah, fine. This was a rocket. Rockets were just shot right next to where we're standing.
This is just some 50 meters away from the hotel where most of the international media is stationed. This right here is a launching pad for rockets used by Palestinian militants. Now, this type of setup is at the heart of the debate within the international community, but also between Israel and the Palestinian militants. The Israeli army has repeatedly accused Palestinian militants of shooting from within densely populated civilian areas, and that is precisely the type of setup we have right here. Rockets set up right next to buildings with a lot of residents in them. Now, the other very noticeable element to be taken into consideration is about 100 meters behind me, a blue UN flag floating above this building. This is another accusation which has been made by the Israeli government and Israeli forces. This rocket launching site is right next to a UN facility.
זאת הכניסה הראשית למסגד. הייתה התקלות עם 5 מחבלים ששמרו והגנו על המסגד. אנחנו יורדים לקומת המרתף במסגד. זו קומת המרתף, כמו שאנחנו רואים אותה, חדר כלי העבודה, בעיקר כלי העבודה מחפירה שנמצאו כאן. בית התפילה נמצא בקומת המרתף. אלה חלק מהאמצעים שנמצאו פה במרחב. זה בעצם נקודה שהייתה חשובה למחבלים. יכולים לראות פה פיר בעומק 14 מטר, שבעצם ממנו התחבר לרשת מנהרות לחימה במרחב הכפר. מנהרה נוספת, פיר נוסף, בעצם שנמצא פה, עדיין לא חקרנו אותו, אבל גם הוא אפשר לראות נכנס פנימה, יש פה ימינה ושמאלה וממשיך פנימה.
When we say that Hamas uses Palestinian children as human shields, this is what we mean. This is a new video of rockets being stored inside a school in Gaza.
בחדר ליד יש מחרטה לייצור רקטות, ותמיד אפשר בשיעור החופשי להתאמן עם איזה קלאץ' מפלסטיק. זה חומר לימודי.
And a terror tunnel underneath the Ferris wheel in an amusement park in Gaza. And here are photos of a terror tunnel underneath a kid's bed. Hamas is using children as shields for their terror activity. Those tunnels I just showed you lead to Hamas's underground terror network of 500 kilometers. But it's nothing new for Hamas. We've known this for a very long time. We've been saying this for a very long time, that Hamas has been using civilian infrastructure to shield their terror cells and weapon storage depot. This is obviously against any international law.
No. Mr. Barghouti, okay, let me ask a question. Mr. Barghouti, let me ask you a question. Mr. Barghouti, you say Hamas never used civilians as human shields. In which case, why do they build this labyrinth of tunnels around schools and hospitals and all the places where civilians are going to be? Why would they do that?
No, the question is not like that. The
but
question is why Israel continued to put Gaza, which is only... Wait. Gaza is only... Wait a minute. Gaza is 140 square miles with 2.3 million people. Where should people go?
Why do
Gaza
they build...
was besieged for
hang on, you're avoiding my question.
Besides
why
the fact
Hamas,
that it was occupied for such a long time.
Let me repeat
Where would they go? How could they fight?
Let me repeat
with Israeli
my question.
airstrikes that
Mr.
are
Barghouti,
killing them around the clock?
Over me.
I mean, you're asking them... You're asking me a question. No,
I'm asking you
answer.
why...
If ask
Hamas,
the question and I will wait for you to finish your question.
If Hamas does not want to use civilians as human shields, why do they build tunnels around schools and hospitals?
First of all, you are again, Mr. Morgan, you are again repeating Israeli propaganda.
It's not propaganda.
They
We've seen the footage.
That hospitals were built, that tunnels were under hospitals. Wait, let me finish. You asked the question, let me answer. It's not true what they say. And yes, they built tunnels to hide from Israeli airstrikes, of course, like Vietnamese built tunnels to hide from American bombardment in Vietnam. It's the same. But to say that they are taking people, civilians, as hostage, as shields, is not true. Wait a minute. I see Hamas fighters on Al Jazeera network attacking Israeli tanks with very little weapons. I don't see them hiding behind the people.
I have proof that I'd like you to listen to. I have
this is one way. That's one way of Israel to justify.
Speak, please, Mr. Barghouti.
The killing of civilians.
Mr. Barghouti, let Alan Dershowitz respond. Let Alan Dershowitz respond.
Okay. Here is in my book, the War Against the Jews. In it, I quote directly from a leader of Hamas praising the use of human shields. He says, "We regard our women and our children as martyrs. We use them as human shields." This is Hamas bragging about the use of human shields.
Who said
bragging
that?
why they will not allow civilians. It's in the book.
Can you tell me the name of this person?
I will send it to you. I can't find it this second.
Tell me the name.
It's there. And not only that, I will send it to you.
Because it's not true.
I will give you a copy of the book.
You can't find the name because it doesn't exist.
And that's why Hamas
You're just repeating Israeli bad propaganda.
Into the tunnels. If you want to wait a few minutes, go off the air. I will find out the name and I will give it to you.
Let me ask Alan. Let me ask
a familiar name.
Alan Dershowitz.
And it appears in this book.
ولا يعلمون أن الشعب الفلسطيني قد طور من موته ومن بحثه على الموت، ولذلك أصبح الموت عند الشعب الفلسطيني صناعة تجيده النساء، تجيده كل من في هذه الأرض، يجيده الشيوخ، يجيده المجاهدون، ويجيده الأطفال. لذلك شكلوا دروعا بشرية من النساء والأطفال والشيوخ والمجاهدين ليتحدوا بذلك آلة القصف الصهيونية، وكأنهم يقولون للعدو الصهيوني إننا نحرص على الموت كما تحرصون على الحياة.